Welcome to your class on support and resistance. Now, the easiest way to think of support and resistance is as a floor and a ceiling. So, let's think of it this way. You have got a house that has no gravity, and you bounce a ball in the house. What is going to happen to the ball? The ball is going to bounce and hit the floor, and then bounce up, but continue to move up until it reaches the ceiling, and it's going to bounce off the ceiling and continue to move down until it reaches the floor. Now, the same works with the market. Support is your floor and resistance is your ceiling. So, when price bounces off of the floor or support, it will continue moving up until it reaches resistance or your ceiling. And once it bounces off of the ceiling, it's going to continue moving down until it reaches the floor or support. So, support is your floor and resistance is your ceiling. Your ball is constantly going to move between them. It's going to bounce off of support to go to resistance, bounce off resistance to go to support. Now let's show you this practically inside the market. Now, there are two types of support and resistance, diagonal and horizontal. So, to plot our diagonal support and resistance, we must use a trend line. Now, this trend line, if you double click it, you'll see 3 dots appear. This means you can now move it around. If you click it again and the 3 dots disappear, you can no longer move it around and it will stay where it is. So, let's double click it. Now, if you move the dot to the left, the dot on the right will remain still and you can move it all over the show. If you click the dot to the right, the dot to the left will stay one place and it'll be your anchor point for your trend line. If you click the dot in the center, you can move the entire trend line. Now, the easiest way to plot a trend line is to start off with the shadow that you want to join, because remember, you plot support and resistance using the tips of your shadows. So you need to join 2 points to create a straight line, and that is what support and resistance is, a straight line. So support pushes price up, and we can see price is gradually moving up. So we're going to start here, and I'm going to click and hold, and then I'm going to move my mouse over to the next shadow I want it to touch. So let's say the next shadow I want it to touch is this shadow over here. So I'm just going to let go, and my trend line would be placed over those 2 shadows. So when I right click, notice how my dots are positioned perfectly over my shadows. These dots are designed to attach to the tips of shadows. So this is support. Support pushes price up. Notice how price comes all the way up, comes down, barely touches it, and then turns around. Now remember, support and resistance is a zone in the market, which means that it doesn't necessarily have to touch your support or resistance line for it to still be valid support or resistance. So it's this more or less area that is your support. So price comes all the way down, gets rejected and supported up, comes all the way down, gets rejected, supported up, and then eventually breaks through your support. And then there is resistance. Resistance pushes the market down. So whenever you see the market moving down gradually, note that that is resistance. So let's try and find our 2 shadows that meet. Remember, you want to find, if you find more than 2 shadows that meet, then that makes for a stronger support or resistance line. So you want to attach the tips of your shadows onto your relevant, the tips of your shadows onto the dots. And notice how, depending on where we place this, support and resistance would have touched this line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Resistance is very strong on this line because price got resisted 6 times. So price came down and then tried to push up again, but was resisted and pushed down again. Price went through, but it then turned around and was pushed down again. Price then came back up again and turned around and was pushed down again. Something that I need you to notice is that resistance pushes the market down. So you can strongly associate resistance with the bears because resistance pushes the market down and support pushes the market up. So you can strongly associate support with the bulls. So whenever price reaches resistance, it is an area in the market where the bears are very strong. So they then push price down again. And whenever price has support, it is an area in the market where the bulls are very strong. So they push price up again. Now, when you are plotting support and resistance, make sure that your support is always supporting price up. And your resistance is always pushing price down. Now, support and resistance also works in a way where you have to play with it to figure out which is your best support or resistance line. So I would say this would be my best support line over here, and this would be my best resistance line over here. And right here, this is my best support line, but this is my best resistance line. Notice how every time price gets to this point, resistance pushes it back down again. Now that is all for diagonal support and resistance. You just need to go back and practice. Now that is all for support and resistance. You just need to go back and practice plotting these lines. Now that is all for diagonal support and resistance. You just need to go and practice plotting these lines. Remember, 2 points that meet form support and resistance. Now let's focus on horizontal support and resistance. Over here, we have got horizontal resistance. Notice how price reaches this point, it gets pushed back down again. It reaches this point, it gets pushed back down again. Down here, we have got horizontal support. Price reaches this point and then gets pushed back down again. Tries to come and test your resistance level, pushes back down again. Now, it struggles, but eventually it then breaks through, but then comes back up again. Horizontal support and resistance is always valid. So even if we scroll back into time, you'll see that price always stops at more or less this line. The market literally moves within support and resistance. Both horizontal and diagonal support and resistance are valid. Now there is a rule with support and resistance, and that rule is once broken, support becomes resistance and resistance becomes support. Now the easiest way to explain that there would be for you to view it as an apartment building. So you have got your apartment building and it has got many floors. So if you have your bouncing ball again and there is no gravity and price bounces, it's going to hit the ceiling. Now if it bounces back down again and then bounces up and then it breaks through the ceiling, it will continue moving up until the next ceiling. But when it comes back down, it is going to stop at your previous ceiling. So your previous ceiling is going to become your new floor. So if it bounces and then breaks through your next ceiling again, it is only going to stop at your next ceiling. And when it comes down, your previous ceiling becomes your new floor. The same applies to support and resistance. So if price breaks through resistance, it's going to continue moving up until the next place of resistance. But when it comes back down, your previous resistance becomes support. Now it also works this way with support. If price bounces, if your ball bounces and it hits your ceiling and then eventually breaks through your floor, it is going to continue going down until your next floor. Once it reaches that floor, it is going to move back up again, and your previous floor will become your new ceiling. And then price is going to move down again. And if it breaks through your support, it is only going to stop at the next point of support. Now, once it bounces up because it's been supported up, it's going to stop at your previous support because your previous support becomes your new resistance. Now let's look at this practically in the market. Let's try and find support or resistance. I would say that this is valid resistance. Notice how once it was broken, it became support at some points. Over here, this is support. It was broken and it became your new resistance. This was resistance. It then became support. Now what you want to do is practice plotting your support and resistance lines. and then hand in your assignment for your support and resistance. Plot them, and we will be able to show you if you are doing it right or wrong. That's all for support and resistance.